want to ask you about what you want here, what you want for your children, what you want for your family, what you want for yourself.
من اینجا میخوایم که خودم دم قدم اول زبان انگلیسی رو یاد بگیرم زبان اینجا.
First of all, I just want to learn English.
یک خانه داشته باشم که در خانه من.
And secondly, I want to have my own house, a house which fully offer equipment that should be in a house, so that I can take my responsibility and help my family, help my kids and husband, and to fulfill all of their wishes.
I'm at the Mangere Refugee Resettlement Centre, sitting in a conference room with Akila Barati and her husband, Mohammed Kazim. Akila and Kazim arrived a few weeks ago with their 3 children and Kazim's mom. They'd been living in Delhi, India, for the past 6+ years after fleeing their home in Afghanistan. They're some of the 1,500 refugees every year who call this place their first home in New Zealand. For many of those people, this is the first time they've had security or even a roof and 4 walls in years. I'm Gwen McClure, and today on The Detail, I'm with my colleague Davina Zimmer, visiting the centre to see what life looks like here, meet some of the newest New Zealanders, and find out what it takes for refugees to get here.
They learn English language, they learn about life in New Zealand. Children are assessed and the adults are assessed both for employability abilities, but also for preparing them for life in New Zealand.
That's Chamel Marathi, who runs the centre. We'll come back to him and to Akila and Kazim's story. But first, a tour of the grounds with Resettlement Case Officer Shaheen Kastawi. Her job includes traveling overseas to meet refugees before they come here, and then helping them get settled in.
So these are the units.
For housing?
Yeah, for housing. So we've got areas that are set up for single people, that are individuals that come, and then we've got areas that are for families, and then single mums as well. We usually try to keep them in one area.
To support each other.
Yeah, to support each other pretty much. This is the playground.
It's a great playground.
I remember this playground really, really well. It was not like this. I don't know, some reason the slides felt so much bigger back then.
Back then, when Shaheen was a child and arrived in New Zealand.
I was born a refugee, so my family actually, my parents became refugees themselves during the Iraq-Iran war.
Her Iranian parents fled to Iraq, where she was born. Then the U.S. invaded Iraq, and Shaheen's family was displaced again to Jordan.
We were in Jordan for overall 3 years in total. Our case was referred to New Zealand, and we were accepted to come to New Zealand. I don't know how to describe that feeling. It is, I've said this before, winning the lotto is not a compared feeling to that. It is the best feeling that you can ever imagine. My dad would watch National Geographic Channel, and he would show us, oh, this is New Zealand, this is that country, and so we came to know what New Zealand is. And this centre is where we stayed initially. Now, the buildings were not like this. It was like an army base, pretty much. But when we first arrived, it was home. It was, it was an actual building. We had lived in tents for 3 years, and just even though it was nothing like this, it was still the best feeling, and it was wonderful. The staff and the safety of the place just made it home. You'll see that usually after school or after lunch that all the children, they don't speak the same languages. They're all from different parts of the world. You see them here
together.
Playing together. And then on the other side of the playground is the schools. We've got the adults classes where they learn some English language lessons, and then there will be cultural orientation there as well. They'll talk to them about things out in the community, like the supermarket. What does a typical supermarket look like? Then we've got the children classes, we've got primary, and then we've got secondary. The secondary schools often go out on trips as well, at least once in an intake.
What kind of a trip would they do?
They will go to visit another high school in the local area to get a sense of what the high school's like in New Zealand.
So is it mornings at school, and then what do the kids do in the afternoon?
So they start school 9 a.m. until 3 p.m., just like how they would in the community. And that's not for just the children, that's for the adults as well. So 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday to Friday, everybody goes to school, young and old, everybody.
That was tough for Shaheen when she arrived.
I remember The thing that most annoyed me was having to wake up early to go to classes in Jordan. We didn't have access to schools. So when we came here, we had to get used to the New Zealand routine. You know, every morning, Monday to Friday, wake up early, go to school. So I remember having to wake up to have breakfast, get ready, then go to school. And every morning was hard, especially the cold mornings. Even though it was October, it was still cold. But I remember going to the classes. Once settled in, we would learn alphabet, we would learn the national anthem, colours, you name it. We even did a trip to the library. I remember one day we did a day trip with everybody, all the adults and children. We went to Mount Eden, I think it was, the museum and Mission Bay, and picnics. We had a picnic bag with us. Each family had sandwiches, muffins, and fruits packed for them. And I can't forget that day. It was wonderful.
I'm sure it really varies depending on who you're talking to, but when you're overseas and you're talking to people who are going to come here, do you find that it's pure excitement, or is there a lot of mixed emotion about leaving behind what they've known and kind of moving further away from their home?
Yep, but so some of them have been refugees for a very long time, so that's in there you see mixed emotions with it. Okay, is this going to happen? Because they don't know, they've had other interviews, and they've probably had to wait for a few years to get a resettlement interview. Some have kind of lost hope, or some feel that it's going to happen immediately, but there is that excitement. But they will miss their families. They will tell you that, how about so-and-so and my family, and then you talk to them about it, but they are still willing to sacrifice it because it is better for them, as they tell you, that than staying back. My own parents, they gave up everything. Their families, their friends, everybody, just to give us, the children, a better life. So, yeah, it is a mixed emotion, but if I ask my dad right now how he felt, he will tell you what I said, that it was more than like winning a lotto. It was the best feeling that you get. Yeah.
Some people that we have resettled here would have spent, 10, 15, 20 years. It's not uncommon that we see people who have been born in camp and grown up in camps, and they come through our program here. There are people who have just recently been brutally displaced from their homes, and then brings over. It's a big variety of people.
This is Chema Marathi. He's head of refugee quota programs. I asked him for the basics of what the center does.
The center has been operating actively since 1979, and it has a capacity of about 270 beds at one given time. But in case of an emergency or in case of need, we can increase the capacity by responding in increasing the number of beds in a room.
Are the people who are here in a group
currently
at any time?
Yeah.
Are they all from the same place, or are they from all over?
Yeah. So an intake usually consists of about anything between 8 and 15 different ethnic groups. We have the diversity of groups because we respond to situations across the globe, but also making sure that people don't oversaturate when they go in the community. For example, this current intake, we have people out of Venezuelans, Colombian, Afghans, Burmese, Rohingya, Syrian refugees, and they go in different regions.
What does a day look like here? Maybe starting from the beginning when people first arrive here in New Zealand.
Yeah, we make arrangements for people when they arrive here. We meet them at the airport. Our staff go and meet them actually airside and assist them through customs. And the first day will be pretty much health and safety, housekeeping information, welcoming them, making sure that everybody is looked after, fed, and then, here we make sure that somebody, if people have medical needs, and everything is attended to it. And then following days, we have daily meetings with all cohort here. We advise them about the program. So the morning is mainly school, so everybody attends school starting from adults. We have secondary classes, primary classes, and early childhood center where parents leave their children there. They are welcome to stay with them there. And then the afternoon is orientation program, different programs on education about life in New Zealand. We bring external external agencies to talk, for example, New Zealand Police, Fire New Zealand. They come and talk on different aspects of life in New Zealand. And we make sure that everybody is looked in terms of health and mental health. So they attend appointments with doctors, with nurses, with mental health professionals when it's needed.
Let's take a step back and talk about how people wind up here in the first place in New Zealand. So what is that process like? Do you guys actually go out to different countries and select people?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, we work very closely and very collaboratively with United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. That's UNHCR. They are the agency who are responsible to look after refugees when they are in refugee situations. If we had this interview 15, 20 years ago, I would say that, we had about 15 million people who were refugees in terms of the definition of who is a refugee, and about 30 million people of concern of the UN system. Currently, unfortunately, the situation is much, much worse. We have more than 35 million people who fall within the definition of refugees, and more than 100 million people who are of concern of UNHCR. They technically are displaced people, but they are normally displaced within their country. So as an example would be somebody displaced from one part of their country to another part of the country wouldn't fit in the definition of being a refugee, although they are in need of some sort of protection. And the solutions that the UN system looks is first is to create conditions for people to go back home. When we interview people overseas, we ask them, what is your aspiration? What would you like? Almost everybody would like to go back home. It's not their intention, get me to another country. And when it's not possible, that the UN system looks into integrating them locally, because most refugees flee from one country to the country next door where it's safe, and then they stop there. And the third solution, which is resettlement, is the only solution when the UN system establishes that the prospects of the person going back home are very slim in the foreseeable future. The prospects of them staying where they are again very, very thin, and it's not safe for them. So they identify the most vulnerable people who are refugees, but they're not safe even in where they are in camps. Currently, there are about more than 2 million people that are identified in need of resettlement, that they won't be able to go back in foreseeable future or settle where they are. And then the places that are offered by the international community are only about 200,000 places a year. The proportion is 10-1. And even this number is, although the numbers are offered, sometimes it's hard for countries to meet these numbers. Luckily, in New Zealand, we have been meeting our quota on regularly. We always exceed by a margin.
Our quota is quite low compared to a lot of countries, though, right?
Our quota in numbers compared to other countries seems to be low, but compared to per capita, it's not low. We are in the top 5-6 countries compared to population. We have presence not only geographically spread around the globe, but we also have a very diverse response in terms of looking after people who have been in camps for 20 years, but we are also very good at responding to crisis. So our quota every year, we allocate about 200 places to what we call large-scale emergencies.
I asked Chema why, if we're good at crisis responses, we aren't taking refugees from Gaza. He says that's a complex situation. For starters, UNHCR doesn't operate in Gaza. There's another UN agency there. Also, he says the first goal would be to try to calm escalation, not to start resettling people right away. And it's very hard to get people out of Gaza safely right now.
We see at the moment, we see Ukraine, we see Gaza, we see Lebanon, where there are about 50 flashpoints around the world. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger. Usually, in the media terms, some are there more prominent and some are quiet, but there are many other flashpoints that are occurring.
Several times a year, teams go overseas to select refugees who'll move here. But they're not just walking around refugee camps looking for people. It's a highly coordinated system where UNHCR has already screened refugees before they're referred to New Zealand.
Quota refugees are already mandated by UN system, so when we select them overseas, they already have recognized refugee status. They are formally refugees. We go and select to make sure that, we have a very, very robust process when we go and do the selection. We make sure that people that are selected to New Zealand is fit for them. For example, if somebody is with a condition that we wouldn't be able to offer care, we would engage with UNHCR and then advise them maybe another country, because no point of bringing them here want to improve their life. This factor.
So there's a lot of really practical stuff.
There are practical stuff, but also we had a very robust process in making sure that the credibility and risk assessment is done. So we make sure that the most vulnerable, needy ones are resettled in New Zealand, but we also make sure that the bad actors are kept out of New Zealand. As you can imagine, 1 million people flying from one country to another country, there's no guarantees there's no criminals in that group, or somebody who technically falls to the definition of being a refugee, but doesn't mean that the person may have not committed serious crimes in their country. So we have very, very robust process to we engage with international partners, with national partners, to make sure that safety and security and credibility of our program is maintained at all time. We are very good at that.
After about 5 weeks at the Mangere complex, refugees are helped into a furnished house, signed up for doctors and schools, and they'll have support for the first 2 years of life here. That's what's in store for Kazım and Akila. They're headed to Palmerston North soon. They're hoping before Christmas. They're Afghan, but they spent the last 6+ years as refugees in India.
I was a member of civil society and human rights network. So due to the threat to my life, I forced to leave my country. So that was the very tough situation, to leave your homeland. But I had no other option. American troops, they start leaving in 2014. The situation start getting worse and worse. So there were so many terrorist attacks, bomb explosions, car explosions, explosion even in schools, in the hospitals, everywhere. Even you cannot imagine. You couldn't find a safe place for you. When I was going to office, I was in a situation I did not know that will I be back home at the night or not, because I saw situation. I see people who went in the morning to office, then they never come back to their home. It was difficult for their families. I can understand. It was difficult for me. So then I decided to go India, because I was a student in India. I know the culture, the language, each and everything. So India was quite a good option for me.
When you got to India, did you rent a house? How did you get in touch with UNHCR? What happened when you got there?
Definitely, being a refugee is very tough for everyone. It is very difficult because you have nothing. Nothing. Nothing means nothing. No, your document is not valid. Your passport is not valid. You do not have any identity, right? You're as a refugee. People know you as a refugee. But Indian governments know refugee as an illegal migrant. They do not call refugee, though there are so difference between refugee and migrant, right? But they call all the refugees as an illegal migrant, and they do not have a law to support refugees. But we are thankful to Indian governments and the people of India. They hosted us, and we are thankful to them, and the UNHCR as well. But when we went there in India, it was difficult quite to settle in a new country. We had nothing, no money, no job. It was quite difficult, but I had the knowledge, I had the experience, and I have the education. So I start searching job, and then finally I got job. I start working with a company. Though I had all the education and experience, but I was paid very less because I was a refugee. I had no document. I have to accept it. I had no any other option. So I accepted. Then I started working there. It was quite difficult for me and for all my family members. Even if I remember those days, all my body start panic. So it is difficult time for us.
Does UNHCR tell you you're going to go to New Zealand, you're going to talk to New Zealand, or do you get to have a choice?
No, we had no choice.
Did you know anything about New Zealand?
Before having the interview or coming to New Zealand, I have very less information about the New Zealand.
Tell me what you do all day here. What does a day look like in the center?
Normally, we have here classes, English classes, and apart from that, there are some other programs for cultural programs and information about education, employment, and about the people of New Zealand, each and everything about our new home. So we are very happy to learn more about our new home, our New Zealand, to see how we can start our new life here.
So in Afghanistan, you said you were a civil servant.
I was a member of civil society.
So what kind of a job do you want to do here?
I would like to have some job with my experience and education that I have got. So I have a master's in public administration, but unfortunately I couldn't get that opportunity to serve Afghanistan. But now I have the knowledge and experience, and I wish to use all my knowledge here in New Zealand. We are lucky here to this opportunity given to us by immigration of New Zealand, but it gives us pain also. We see people in Afghanistan, they're suffering. They're passing very difficult times right nowadays, and they do not have access to education, to health service, and daily life is so difficult for them. So that gives us also like a kind of pain to us. We are here, and I wish I could do something for them, but unfortunately my hands are tied. I couldn't do anything. But I wish for them to have a good life, and all this darkness come over one day, as soon.
And as for his own resettlement?
Definitely it was hard for us, but this is the great chance that I had in my life.
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Akila Barati and Mohammed Kazim, and to Marwa for translating, as well as to Shaheen Kastawi and Chema Marathi. This episode was engineered by Phil Benge and produced by Alexia Russell, Davina Zimmer, and Sharon Brett Kelly. I'm Gwen McClure. Matewa.